Okay, so the scripture that I have is Leviticus 23 and beginning. I guess we could begin. Who would want to read? We could start off. We could do the whole thing, right? And then actually, we could do it up to maybe 32. Who would like to read 1 through? Oh, could they hear me? Okay. Or maybe I could read. I could start reading. I'll start reading 1 through 8, I guess. Okay.
You guys start from 1? Okay.
1?
Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure where else to begin. Okay. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, the appointed times of Yahuwah, which you are to proclaim as Kadesh gatherings, my appointed times are these. 6 days work is done, but the 7th day is a Shabbat of rest. A Kadesh gathering, you do no work. It is a Shabbat to Yahuwah in all your dwellings. These are the appointed times of Yahuwah, Kadesh gatherings, which you are to proclaim at their appointed times. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, between the evenings is the Pesach to Yahuwah. And on the 15th day of this month is the festival of Matzah. To Yahuwah, 7 days you eat unleavened bread. Okay. On the first day you have a Kadesh gathering, you do no servile work. And you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahuwah for 7 days. On the 7th day is a Kadesh gathering, and you do no servile work. Okay, you are seeing. I'm going to continue. Okay. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, and you shall say to them, when you come into the land which I give you, and shall reap its harvest, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the Kohen. And he shall wave the sheaf before Yahuwah for your acceptance. On the morrow after Shabbat, the Kohen waves it." I'm sorry, I'm reading if I should finish.
You want me to finish reading?
Yes.
Okay. Also, what version are you reading?
Oh, the one I got from Hallelujah. The Hallelujah scriptures.
Okay. That's the one that we got at
Shavuot.
Yeah, Shavuot, yes. All right, you stopped at 13?
Yes, I did. Right, yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, my vision.
11.
11? Okay. And he shall wave the sheaf before Yah to be accepted for And he shall wave the sheaf before Yah for your acceptance. On the morrow after the Shabbat, the priest waves it. And on that day, when you wave the sheaf, you shall prepare a male lamb, a year old, a perfect one, as an ascending offering to Yah. And his grain offering, 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, an offering made by fire to Yah, a sweet fragrance, and his drink offering, 1/4 of a hin of wine. And you do not eat bread or roasted grain or fresh grain until the same day that you have brought an offering to your Elohim, a law forever throughout your generations and all your dwellings. And from the morrow after the Shabbat, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, you shall count for yourselves 7 complete Shabbats. Until the morrow after the 7th Shabbat, you should count 50 days. Then you shall bring a new grain offering to Yah. Karen, did you want to read the whole chapter?
No.
What verse did you?
Yeah, I was trying to find where it started. I'm sorry.
Oh, for where it started, I had Leviticus 23.
Oh, okay.
Starting from, verse 23, but let me see if it's a little bit before that.
Let me see. I'm trying to see it in another version.
Nope, you're right, Keturah.
Yeah, I have starting from verse 23. You want to start reading there?
Yes.
Okay. And Yah spoke to Moshe, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, saying, in the 7th new moon, on the first day of the new moon, you have a rest, a remembrance of Teruah, a set apart gathering. You do no servile work, and you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yah. And Yah spoke to Moshe, saying, on the 10th day of the 7th new moon is Yom Kippurim. It shall be a set apart gathering for you, and you shall afflict your beings, and shall bring an offering made by fire to Yah. And you do no work on that same day, for it is Yom Kippurim, to make atonement for you before Yah your Elohim. For any being who is not afflicted on that same day, he shall be cut off from his people. And any being who does any work on that same day, that being I shall destroy from the midst of his people. You do no work, a law forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. It is a Shabbat of rest to you, and you shall afflict your beings on the 9th day. Okay, I think this is for Sukkot, right? Let me see.
No, that last, the 32 will be the last verse.
Okay, so it is a Shabbat of rest to you, and you shall afflict your beings on the 9th day of the new moon at evening. From evening to evening, you observe your Shabbat. Sounds like he's very serious here. This is Karen. Did you have notes you want to go over?
Well, I did the since part of the study was to do the Hebrew letters for Teruah and for Day of Atonement. I did. Did everyone do the Hebrew letters for Teruah? Okay. I mean, I did. Well, no, you can't even see it, but I know. I believe the first letter is Tav, right? Yeah, because it's from left to right. Tav, Resh. It is U. I know it makes an U sound, but I believe it's the Vav with the. We probably gonna need to. June, I'm gonna need. I'm gonna need the share screener.
Maybe we could do the.
Maybe it'll be easy to have that
first before we do the actual word study.
What happened? I'm sorry. I didn't hear you, Katora. Sorry. Jojo.
Sorry, you're muted, sweetie.
Oh, she's.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was asking if you wanted to do the study first about the actual feast before we did the word.
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay. All right, so starting from verse 23, so the first feast here, he's talking about the Feast of Trumpets, Feast of Blowing, or the Feast of Shouting. I wanted us to look up that word. Like, does anybody have a concordance or like the Mind Sword on your phone where you could pull up the definition of that word so we could see what it's pointing us to?
We got the blue letter.
Okay. So that'll be from verse 24, a remembrance of Teruah, it says. So we could pull up that word Teruah. Or, Millie, how about when you pull it up that's what you were saying, Joan?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Go ahead. If you could pull it up on the screen for us.
What verse did you want?
That was Leviticus 23, verse 24. And then it'll be H8643.
So Milo, I click this, right? I click on the verse. On which letter? Or which word?
It's the H8643, Teruah.
Oh, right.
Yeah, blowing.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
So it means alarm, signal, sound of tempest, shout or blast of war, or alarm or joy.
So I to correlate with this verse and what he was talking about, I got Numbers 10 verses 1 to 3 to see, so we could see exactly what was happening during this time.
Can I read it?
Yes, please.
And Yahuwah spoke unto Moshe, make you two trumps. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna mute you for a second. Make you two trumpets of silver, of a whole piece shall you make them. You shall make them use them. That you may use them, for the calling of the assembly and for the journeying of the camps. And when they shall blow with them, all the assembly shall assemble themselves to you at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. Did you want me to keep going?
Yes, I would like for you to read unto verse 10.
Perfect, because I had that as well. All right. Verse 4. And if they blow but one trumpet, then the princes, which are the heads of the thousands of Israel, shall gather themselves unto you. When you blow an alarm, then the camps that lie on the east part shall go forward. When you blow an alarm the second time, then the camps that lie on the south side shall take their journey. They shall blow an alarm for their journeys. Verse 7. But when the congregation is to be gathered together, you shall blow, but you shall not sound an alarm. And the sons of Aharon the priest shall blow the trumpets, and they shall be to you for an ordinance forever throughout your generations. And if you go to war in your land against the enemy that oppresses you, then you shall blow an alarm with the trumpet, and you shall be remembered. Before Yahuwah your Elohim, and you shall be saved from enemies. Hallelujah. And in the day of your gladness, and in your solemn days, and in the beginning of your months, you shall blow with the trumpets over your burnt offerings and over the sacrifices of your peace offerings, that they may be to you for a memorial before your Elohim. I am Yahuwah your Elohim.
Hallelujah. So if we could identify together the different things he was calling us to do or to be with the sound of the trumpet. Like, what was the purpose of this trumpet, and what were we supposed to do when we heard it?
I love that you're going here.
What'd you say, Millie?
I said I love that you're going here because it is important. The sound of the alarm, when it makes me think of when, and I'm going to go into Revelations later on, when the trumpets wind up sounding. What are we supposed to be prepared for, and how do we know which way we're supposed to go? Just from the beginning, it's this in verse 2. It's the calling of the assembly. It's sometimes it's used as an alarm, like, hey, whoa, something's going. And sometimes it's not an alarm, but it's much more of literally a calling, right? So one of the aspects is, who are they calling? Are they calling the leaders, specifically the heads of the tribes of Israel? That's one of them that I was seeing in here.
And so also not only the calling of the assembly, but it was a call to journey. It was time for them to come before the tabernacle to meet with Yah. And it's really interesting how this is the first feast that's calling us together, and it's all leading up to the last feast of the 7th month, which is Tabernacles, Sukkot. Not only was he calling the leaders, but he was calling the people. You could see in verse 3, the whole congregation was supposed to come meet before the tent of appointment to meet with Yah.
And you know what I was thinking? There's in Psalms 47, let's see if I can pull it up, verse 5. It says in Psalms 47, verse 5, Elohim is gone up with a shout, Yahuwah with the sound of a trumpet. And I just think about like the voice of Yahuwah, and he's the one that calls, right? So I really believe that he gives us physical things that really portray something much more spiritual, right? So he gives us a physical instrument to hear alarms, to hear sounds, and yet his voice is like thunder and like trumpets um and so I think about that, like, are we able to hear the voice of Yahuwah when he's softly calling us, or when he's sounding that alarm and saying you need to be convicted about something, or you need to flee from something, giving you discernment. So I think it's more just his voice, and just reminding us of that. I'm going to try to find a verse where when they met with him on the mount, or when they were near the mount to meet with him, that he had sounding. So give me a second. I'm going to try to find that. Go ahead, Katora.
No, that's an excellent point, because it's his voice, but then who are the trumpets that he's using? He's using his people. Like, we are supposed to be the alarm that's supposed to be sounded at this time. That's why it's interesting when he says he's calling the leader, he's calling the people. Well, I believe first it starts with the leaders, the ones that he's like made aware of his Torah, and he's called to this beautiful walk. We need to be sounding our voices and warning the people that there's a special time right now. People are distracted with these Halloweens and Christmases and things. And it's interesting how it's around the most important solemn time that Yah has called his people to do. It's like a smoke screen with all these other distractions. But yeah, we have to be the trumpet at this time. I have a verse. I think it's let's see, this verse Peter. But I'll let you read that verse first, Millie. But I had a verse showing how we are the trumpets in a way.
Sweet. So I have Exodus or Shemot 19, starting at verse 19. And it says, "And when the voice of the trumpet sounded long and waxed louder and louder, Moshe spoke, and Elohim answered him by a voice. And Yahuwah came down upon Mount Sinai on the top of the mount, and Yahuwah called Moshe up to the mount, and Moshe went up. And Yahuwah said unto Moshe, Go down, charge the people, lest they break through unto Yahuwah to gaze, and many of them perish." And then he goes on. But I think it's very interesting at this time that the trumpet, the sounding of the shofar, or when I say shofar, is going off in pivotal times, So I think that's very beautiful.
The verse I was thinking about is 1 Peter chapter 2.
I think you might be breaking up a little bit. You said 1 Peter 2?
1 Peter 2. And then if we could start with verses, let's see, read verse 5.
I'll do this one.
There you go. I was going to say, your lady's quiet.
Ye also, as lively stones, are built up a spiritual house, an holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God by Yahusha.
So you see, like, we're in the verse that we read from Leviticus 23, it was time to come before the tabernacle. But here, he's calling his people. He said that we are the lively stones that builds a spiritual house. So the house is supposed to come before Yah and cleanse himself. Well, we're going to get to those verses as we start talking about atonement. But it's a time for affliction, reflection, going to our Father and allow him to really cleanse us. And this is why in the polo I was saying, we have to identify these distractions, because especially during this time, they're going to be coming up, because Yah he's really trying to have an intimate experience with us.
I think it's really beautiful, because it makes me think, when I was looking at this, right? So we know that there's not just 7 months in our calendar, in our year. And I'm not talking about Gregorian, I'm talking about the Hebrew calendar. And yet the 7th month, and we always talk about, or people talk about the number 7 being completion, right? There's 7 days to the week, and that's when he completed all his work. And then he entered into his rest, and just the 7 sabbatical years, like every 7 years, and then you go into Jubilee. But if 7 years is that completion, and I think of the 7th month, I'm like, why would you choose the 7th month? And I was just kind of rattling my brain. And it was like, one, there's no celebrations in the dead of winter. We don't have any particular set apart moedim in that time period. And it made me think, there's trumpets, there's atonement, and then there's tabernacles. And I was thinking, okay, you're sounding the alarm to call us to afflict our souls and humble ourselves before you come and tabernacle with us. And I wasn't just thinking in the sense of right now, I'm talking about like into eternity. Like, this is the 7th month to me, is this aspect of, we need to be awakened, we need to be warned, we need to have our spirits stirred to him, so that we can, when we get into the study of atonement next, can wind up afflicting ourselves, humbling ourselves, so that when we come before him and he wants to tabernacle with us, we're prepared to do so. So I just, the 7th month starting with an alarm, I don't think is a quinkity. Well, obviously it's not, because Yahuwah knows exactly what he's doing. So I think it's just perfect that he does this. And like you said, Couture, it's beautiful because we are that living temple. We are his vessels. We are to be sounding the alarm. It's like, how you say, Yochanan or John the Mercer, right? Where he's sounding the alarm and preparing the way. We still take on that aspect of preparing the way for Yahushua's second coming and being able to live righteously so that people can look at us and lift up the Most High. And the last thing I want to note was when you mentioned there's so many distractions, not only in this life. I think it's very, you mentioned with all the worldly feasts, and we're entering to a time where there's such set apart feasts and crazy wicked feasts. I'm talking about Halloween and stuff like that, where it's just around that same time period where the enemy's just trying to come towards the end of it. And those are distractions, because the world is very much distracted with that and the spirit of Halloween and the spirit of the holidays. And I believe it is a spirit and not the Ruach HaKodesh. Shalom, Abigail. So we're talking about Yom Teruah, the Feast of Trumpets right now, Feast of Blowing. So good stuff, sis. Anybody else had anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I looked up that word afflicted because I just wanted a deeper meaning for it. And it means to humble yourself, but it also said, I'm trying to pull it up on the computer. But it's Strong's H6031. And it says to be occupied, be busied with, to afflict, oppress, humble, be bowed down. I like that one. And then one of them says to be depressed or be downcast. And I think it kind of goes in line with what you were saying, Milo. It's funny how it's surrounded around in our world around a time that is wicked and things like that. But it's also a reminder of what's to come, like Keturah said. And I think you said that too in Revelation, when we know what that sound is for, as far as the trumpets being blown. That's a reminder of what's to come. So it can be looked at as sad if you focus on the end versus the reminder of being humble in this walk and being righteous and knowing that there's going to be a lot of other distractions that are going on, but being afflicted or being humble is what he continues to emphasize in verse 29 of Leviticus 23, and then I think he says it again in an earlier verse. But that seems like that's the I guess that's the ruach or the feelings that you should have around both Yom Teruah and Kippur, because for Yom Teruah, that's the trumpet, that's the reminder of what the end is going to be like. But it's also a reminder of this life is short. And, you want to be humble and make sure that you're right with Yahuwah and right in the land with your brothers and sisters. That was awesome.
And that's key. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, what you were gonna say, Melody?
No, go first.
When you said about not only are we in a distracting time, but we're in a very wicked time. It reminded me of the message that we're supposed to be given in Revelation 18. Is that the verse you were thinking about?
You muted yourself, sister.
Revelation, hold on one second. Revelation 18, verse 4 and 5. Well, first go to, if you guys don't mind, we can go to Isaiah 58. I wanted to connect the trumpet with us. And then if we can go to Revelation with what are we saying? What is our message to the people?
Katora, do you be reading my notes ahead of time?
Isaiah 58, sorry.
I'm trying to flip because I'm like, I know I gotta say it.
One
Hallelujah.
No, but like when we go to study and we ask Abba to guide us, he only has one spirit, one Ruach. So that's the one that's leading us both.
Hallelujah.
All right. So first verse says, cry aloud, do not spare. Lift up your voice like the shofar. Declare to my people their transgression and the house of Jacob their sins. Yet they seek me day by day, and a delight to know my ways as a nation that did righteousness, and did not forsake the right rulings of their Elohim. They ask of me rulings of righteousness. They delight in drawing near to Elohim. They say, why have we fasted, and you have not seen? Why have we afflicted our beings, and you took no note? Look, in the day of your fasting, you find pleasure and drive on all of your labors. Look, you fast for strife and contention, and to strike with the fist of wrongness. You do not fast as you do this day to make your voice heard. So he's talking about a specific day that we're afflicting ourselves, we're calling ourselves together. And I think when we go into atonement, we'll see how it's the same language that before, or even now, the people are not, they're not seeking him with a sincere heart. But he is calling the people to do that. He's calling the people to sincerely afflict themselves and examine themselves so that we can give the message that he's trying to give. And in verse 4 says, look, did I read that already? You fast for strife and contention and to strike with the fist of wrongness. You do not fast as you do this day to make your voice heard on high. Is it a fast that I have chosen, a day for a man to afflict his being? Is it to bow down his head like a bulrush and to spread out sackcloth and ashes? Do you call this a fast and an acceptable day to Yah? Is this not the fast that I have chosen, to loosen the tight cords of wickedness, to undo the bands of the yoke, to exempt the oppressed, and to break off every yoke? So you see, the fast that is being done in this world, that's not what he wants. It's just like when he says, those sacrifices and offerings I did not desire, but a broken and contrite spirit. He's calling us to fast for the right things, which is to loosen the cords of the wickedness and to undo the yoke that's been oppressed on the people. This is our message. Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, and that you bring to your house the poor who are cast out? When you see the naked and you cover him and not hide yourself from your own flesh, then your light will break forth like the morning. Your healing will spring forth speedily, and your righteousness shall go before you. The esteem of Yah will be your rear guard. Oh, wait, let me continue reading. And then when you call, Yah will answer. And when you cry, he would say, here I am. If you take away the yoke from your midst, the pointing of the finger and the speaking of unrighteousness, and if you extend your being to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted being, then your light shall dawn in the darkness, and your darkness be as noon. And then Yah will guide you continually, and he will satisfy your being in drought, and he will strengthen your bones. And you shall be like a well-watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters not fail. Hallelujah. I'm going to keep reading. And in verse 12, it says, and those from among you shall build the old waste places. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations, and you'll be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to dwell in. So, amen. I mean, look at all these, look at what's being received if we truly like understand and appreciate the time and what he's trying to do in each of our lives. And look what we can give to the people. He says we can be facilitators and undoing the yoke of bondage and that's been placed upon them. But we first have to humble ourselves and go to him first and let him cleanse us.
And you know what I like about this? That first verse that opens it up when it says, "Cry aloud, spare not, lift up your voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgression, the house of Yaakov their sins." It's this to me is that trumpeting sound of alarm, and I've had it where brothers and sisters have used their voice in this manner to set me free from our own bondage. You know, like I think in twofold. The people that do not know Yahuwah are clearly in bondage, and this is something I'll be honest, like Yahuwah is trying to say, you need to preach the gospel. You need to speak. You can't be ashamed. Like you need to go out there and use your voice and you know what I'm saying? And I made you salt and light for a reason. Do not let your salt lose its flavor. But then I also think within the body that we are trumpets to each other. We need to sound the alarms to each other if someone is in bondage. And I do believe that our brothers and sisters can be oppressed while in Messiah and need to be pulled out of some fires at times. And it's beautiful because in this, he's talking about this aspect of fasting, but fasting the wrong way. Like even when they were fasting, it wasn't, they were still being unjust. He talks about even in verse 3, behold, in the day of your fast, you find pleasure. Like fasting is not supposed to be about this pleasure or exacting your labors and getting back from people and stuff like that. It's a giving. It is literally almost this depletion of yourself. And yet they weren't doing that way. But I love that Yahuwah extends it and says, listen, okay, here's fasting, but here's the depth of what I truly want. Break the yokes, like Keturah was saying, break the yokes of the bondage of those that are oppressed. And we're able to do that. And you mentioned before, Keturah, about he uses his people. We are like his hands and feet in that sense. And it's a privilege for us to be able to be used by Yahuwah himself. He can do whatever he wants on his own. He can simply speak the word and it's done. But the fact, I love saying that he partners with his people, that he partners with us as daughters to be able to speak life into each other, to break chains and things that to pray with one another, to fast with one another, and do this type of fasting. It's beautiful. And there's just one other verse I wanted to mention that kind of stood out to me was where was he break the breaches? Where was it? Oh,
You said to break what?
The breaches and repair.
Oh, to be repair of the breach.
Yeah, I'm sorry, repair the breaches.
He said,
12.
That was okay.
12. And it says, thank you. And they that shall be of you shall build the old waste places. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations, and you shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of paths to dwell in. I didn't think so much of the physical building of our land, although that is to come. I was thinking the hearts of people and literally being like, what happened? Say that again, sis.
No, I just said definitely. That's all.
Right. And I was thinking, like Messiah called the first disciples to be fishers of men, right? And we're to be peacemakers. We're to literally repair the breaches between men and Yahuwah. Not saying that we are the high priest, not saying in that sense, but in the sense of when we're able to share the good news and we're able to bring people along to our Father. And I was listening when Karen was praying, she said, Daddy. I was like, I don't think I ever really call Abba Daddy. Like that's just an extra intimate place. I don't even call my father on earth Daddy. That's just like a place of, I don't know how to explain it, but it hit me. And it's just, we're able to do that. We're able to bring people to our Daddy and repair those breaches, mend those broken hearts. And it's all in this limelight of sounding the alarm. It has to begin with some type of urgency. Yes. It has to begin with some type of call to us. I mean, each one of us, Yahuwah did that. He was a trumpet to each one of us. He literally sounded alarm in our spirit and said, you need to turn from your sin. You need to follow me. You need to keep my commands. Give me a second. I think something's right. So I just think that's absolutely beautiful.
Amen.
I something along the, well, not really along the same lines, but in the Numbers verse 10, chapter Numbers 10 verse 10, it says that when before engaging in war, it was instructing them to blow the trumpets, and then they were saying that Yah would hear, it. And that's interesting. Like, it just makes me wonder, like that gets his attention somehow. And oh, one of my children need my help. Let me assist. Like, because it actually says, um, you know, he will. Let me see. Let me read it. Also in the days of your gladness, and in your solemn days, and in the beginnings of your months, ye shall blow the trumpets over your burnt offerings. Oh, actually, that's not the right verse.
Verse 9.
9? Oh, yeah. And if ye go to war in your land against the enemy that oppresseth you, then ye shall blow an alarm with the trumpets, and ye shall be remembered before Yah, and ye shall be saved from your enemies. So I wonder, like, if they didn't blow the trumpet, you know, basically, did Yah not show up? I mean, I know he knows everything that's going on at every moment, but it's very interesting that he puts that there.
I just want to piggyback off of that because we definitely blew trumpets yesterday for Victoria, and I really believe that verse, even verse 10, still coincides with the blowing of trumpets, in your time of need or in your time of distress. In verse 10, where it says, "And in the day of your gladness and in your appointed time, and at the beginning of your months, you shall blow the trumpets over your burnt offerings and over your peace offerings." Is prayer not a peace offering? That's how I see it. "And they shall be a remembrance for you before Elohim. I am Yahuwah, your Elohim." And then from there, I was going to go to Psalms 81, 1 through 4, but I really think almost the whole chapter kind of relates. But yesterday when Victoria was sharing, her distress while we were actually talking about feast times, we never would have known that had she not, shared that with everyone. And Milo asking about feast times is what really made her speak up. And we immediately went to blowing our trumpets. We went to opening our mouths and asking for prayer and singing a song. And in Psalms 81, it says, "To the chief singer on harp of Asaph, shout for joy to Elohim, our strength." We immediately, that Ruach was moving. The Ruach was moving because we immediately went to shouting and praising and singing, seeking that strength for our sister. Praise and shout to Elohim of Yaakov. Lift up a song and beat the tambourine, the pleasant lyre and whiz the harp. Blow the ram's horn at the time of the new moon, at the covering on our festival day. For this is a law for Yisrael and a right ruling of the Elohim of Yaakov. He appointed it in Yehoshaphat for a witness when he went throughout the land of Mizraim. I heard a language that I did not know. I removed his shoulder from the burden. His hands were free from the basket. You called in distress, and I rescued you. I answered you in the covering of thunder. I proved you at the waters of Meribah. I'm just not there. So I just wanted to, point that out, that we're in that festival time. And of course, we don't always know, depending on where you live, we don't always know, when we see the new moon, if that's the first day or the second day. Sometimes it's hard to tell with all the manipulation that they do. But we're still, the Ruach is still moving and keeping us aligned with those appointed times, and filling us with that joy and that fire, so to speak. I just wanted to point that out, how that kind of relates.
And these two verses, these 9 and 10 that you guys are bringing out, is definitely speaking to me, because as some of you guys know, this was a very tough week for me. Won't go into details because we are recording, but I didn't sound my alarm the way I should have. And Keturah, I'm not gonna lie, like Keturah smacks me up, lady. She does it very gently, but she does. Her words be a dagger, and I'm like, oh, Yahuwah. But it's needed because it's this. It kind of lost for words.
As soon as you said my name, I don't hear anything after in Keturah.
Oh, I said you smack me up in a good way. You do. Your words are a dagger to me, and they need to, right? The words of Yahuwah is like a double-edged sword, and we need our brothers and sisters to be able to cut off some things that we can't do ourselves. But this aspect that I think June was the one that brought up 9, to call or to sound the alarm, and Yahuwah will hear when we're in the midst of war in our land. And again, now obviously this is physical, right? This is physically when you're in land, physically when you have wars, physically when the enemy is oppressing you and coming against you. But I always kind of take it to another level of in our own lives. Even this week, like I did not sound my trumpet to Yahuwah. I was just almost running away type of thing. And then, but I find it beautiful because then I had my sister Keturah who I was speaking to, and those who pray for one another sound the alarm for each other. You know, sometimes I feel like we get so weak that it's just trying to call out, but I can't do it, or I'm running away. And I do believe that Yahuwah uses our brothers and sisters to be able to sound alarms for ourselves, like you were mentioning, Ezzy, and just it's so powerful because he hears us, Shalom, that he hears us and he hears our cry. And it's almost like, I feel like when I was just reading this verse, it's like Yahuwah is saying, call out to me. Yes, I am capable. You mentioned it. He's omnipotent. He's he's all powerful. He's all knowing. He knows what we're going through. But the fact that he says, sound that alarm and I will hear you. You need to sound that alarm. And it's still it's almost this aspect of, again, that partnering where it's like, I am Yahuwah, but I need you to call out to me. I need you to seek me. I need you to trust me. And when you call, I will hear you and I will answer and I will be your rear guard. But he still desires that from us. And I almost, although sometimes it doesn't always feel so good, I like that he does that in the sense of he doesn't just come in necessarily and always sweep away our enemies, but he's like, I'm literally going to take you through this fire, but you got to cling on to me. So I think this was so, I don't know I can't express in words what these two verses mean to me. But also in verse 10 and Numbers 10, it says, in the day of your gladness, there's this twofold. Either way, we're rejoicing, or when we're mourning, something has to be going up to Yahuwah at all times. So in the highs and the lows, we're still sounding a trumpet, whether it's an alarm of help or it's simply that voice of just praise and adoration towards him. Wow, this is crazy because I didn't get all this on my own when I was looking through trumpets, but I really appreciate being able to dive into this. And I think Ellen just joined us. We are in Numbers 10. We're discussing today the feast of Yom Teruah, trumpets, and Yom Kippur. And right now we've been in Yom Teruah and just gathering both the physical implications, but also the spiritual depth of what it means. So, shalom.
Awesome. Shalom, shalom.
If we could also connect. Oh, sorry. Shalom.
Go ahead, Keturah.
Oh, Karen, did you have another verse?
No, I actually had those verses, but as the sisters were sharing, it made me think of when there's an alarm, there tends to be a sense of urgency. You know what I mean? Like I was feeling it now, but you were talking like Yahushua or Yahuwah wants us to, like you were saying, Milo, to use our mouth. Like we can, like during this time, this is the time where we need to speak up about his feast. You know, because I know, like I said, in my job, they celebrate Halloween. We'll have the Halloween decorations. So this is my opportunity to also sound my trumpet. You know what I mean? Like, okay, if I don't celebrate Halloween, so why don't I celebrate Halloween? And using this time to share about his feast, as opposed to having how can I say, like, I guess you could say like a judgmental heart if you want to say it that way, but just using my trumpet because it is urgent. Like we do need to use this time to speak up and use our voices. So that's what I was thinking when we're talking about trumpets. Blow, the word blow is shown a lot too, because I'm like blow, blow, blow. There's something with that too. Oh my goodness, I'm like, I'm feeling a certain way, so I'm like, it's good, but we need to act but definitely examine our hearts. Like I need to definitely examine my heart to make sure that I'm humble and I'm expressing it with humility, where people or the women could hear me as well. And yeah, so there's a sense of urgency that I feel that we need to have during this time, always, but I feel more during this time, because it's like a preparation for him when he comes. I'm like, oh my gosh. But you want others to know. It's almost like it's not fair. I feel like I'm like, I know I have this great gift. Like I should be sharing it with others. You know what I mean? It's almost like, why not? Like everybody else views other things like, oh, they're joyful about Christmas. They're joyful about so many other things. We need to be even more joyful about his feast. So that's what I started thinking, and I never felt it that way before.
That's true, and I always think, I think about these feasts, and I'm like, man, there's this joy, and then there's always that tinge of sorrow, because it's like you can't fully partake in it because I we're in exile, we're not in our land. I just imagine if literally we were all surrounded, like for example, like we have to all travel down, like we're traveling down to Carolinas and going to celebrate. But can you imagine if we're all in the midst of already being in a community, and this is what we're surrounded by, and this is the talk and the walk that we do, and just constantly getting edified in the midst of our brothers and sisters, and being able to celebrate things to the fullest. So I always think about that, and I think Yahuwah uses it, or at least for me, Yahuwah uses that in saying that's why you need to seek me while you're in the land of your enemies, because I will hear you. And it goes back to that alarm and the trumpeting. Like he's going to hear us until he regathers all his people again. And but yeah, it made me think. As you ladies are talking about witnessing, and I suck at it. I do. I'm not gonna lie. I need to. I don't know what it is that holds me back from using, like you said, carrying my voice and sounding the alarm to others. But I need to use it more. And yeah, so good stuff.
I was just going to add to that, because like I said, really the whole chapter of 81, 1 through the whole thing is good. But to what you were saying, how Keturah sometimes has to slap you or has to put you in check. Verse 10, we know Yahuwah is the Elohim of hosts, Yahuwah of hosts. And then verse 10, it says, I am Yahuwah, your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim. So he's reminding us there, open your mouth wide and I fill it.
What verse?
Psalms 81:10. I read again. I am Yahuwah, your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim. Open your mouth wide and I fill it. That's deep.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
I wanted to know, we could also look at Joel 2, verses 12 to 17. When June was talking about the sound of the alarm, I thought about that. It has the same word as we were reading in Numbers Leviticus. So that's Joel chapter 2, starting from I think 11. Let me. Yeah, let's start from 11. It says, and Yahuwah shall give forth his voice before his army. We are his army. For his camp is very great. For mighty is the doer of his word. For the day of Yahuwah is great and very awesome. And who does bear it? Yet even now declares Yah, turn to me with all your heart, and with fasting, and with weeping, and with mourning, and tear your heart and not your garments. and turn back to Yah your Elohim, for he shows favor and is compassionate, patient, and of great loving commitment, and he shall relent concerning the evil. Who knows? He might turn and relent and leave a blessing behind him, a grain offering and a drink offering for Yah your Elohim. Blow a trumpet in Zion, set apart a fast, call an assembly. Gather the people, set the assembly apart, and assemble the elders. Gather the children and the nursing babies. Let a bridegroom come out from his room, and a bride from her dressing room. Hallelujah. This, I feel like, exemplifies the point of what he's trying to do. Like, we're preparing to meet our king. That's what it's all about. And these may be like mini rehearsals, but the goal is to be prepared for our king. And he's trying to dress us, and he's trying to use us to gather his other sheep that have not woken up yet. So beautiful, because as we're going back to is Yah who's blowing the trumpet, it's like he's blowing the trumpet to his people, and then we're then being used to call the others in, like, come, the wedding is ready, get dressed, prepare yourself, and come out of her. And that was the verse. And Millie, you want to go read that verse in Revelation 18? Oh, she left? Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think she stepped away, or that she's back.
She's back.
My apologies. Can you repeat that last part? I was able to hear some of you.
I was saying, did you want to read the verse in Revelation 18? I was just picturing just now. I read Joel. He's blowing the trumpet in our ears, the priests and the leaders, and then we're then in turn like repeating what he's saying and calling the other lost sheep.
I only got a part of
Did
that.
you have Revelation 18, 4 and 5?
Revelation 18. Okay, I heard part of you because you're breaking up for some reason. You said Revelation 18? Sorry.
Yeah, isn't that the verse you had, you said? Verse 4 and 5?
No, you haven't. I was in Revelations 8 to 11 with the different trumpets that were sounding. And
okay.
But I don't mind reading it.
Okay.
Revelation 18, 4 and 5. Okay. Sorry, June, we're going to go to 18. And we're going to start at verse 4 and 5. And it says, "And I heard another voice from Shemayim saying, 'Come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, or the Shemayim, and Elohim has remembered her iniquities.'" Did you want to jump into that, Keturah?
Yeah, so this was yes, because you're going to say something. This was the one part of the alarm that was to be sounded. Because I think in the beginning we were talking about the different reasons for this, or the different reasons for the blowing of the voice. And we had joy, we had calling of assembly, we had a journeying, and then we also talked about meeting before Yah. And this is the warning that needs to be given as well with the alarm that's to be sounded at this time.
Definitely agreed. Do you want you think we can transition into atonement now? You think this would be a good time? Karen and Keturah? You're both silent, so I'm going to...
Sorry, with this.
Okay.
Hold on.
I'm good with that.
Cool beans.
Yeah, sorry. We can start from Leviticus 16, unless anybody had another verse.
I'm going to pause the recording. All right, Keturah, you said Leviticus 16?
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna read verses 29 to 34. That's where it started from. So Vaikra, Leviticus 16:29. It says, "And this shall be a statute forever unto you, that in the 7th month, so on the same month, on the 10th day of the month, you shall afflict your souls and do no work at all, whether it be one of your own country or a stranger that sojourns among you." I love when he brings in the sojourners. Verse 30. For on that day shall, oops, yes, we're switching over to Yom Kippur. Thank you, June. Verse 30, for on that day shall the priest make an atonement for you to cleanse you, that you may be clean from all your sins before Yahuwah. It shall be a Sabbath of rest unto you, and you shall afflict your souls by a statute forever. I'm going to pause for a second. I think it's very interesting. I'm just thinking about this. Yom Teruah and Yom Kippur, these two feasts are like Sabbaths. And the Sabbath day in and of itself is a seal amongst his people. Now, the Sabbath, the 7th day of each week is obviously, it's not always Yom Teruah and Yom Kippur, but the aspect that these feasts are held like a Sabbath, and how high in high regard Yahuwah holds his Sabbath, his days of rest, and it's a seal to his people. If anyone can find that verse. I think it's beautiful. He literally intertwines all his feasts and mends them. And we read, I think Karen was the one that opened up and was reading Leviticus 23, where it started off in regards to his Sabbaths and his feast days. And Joan, we are in Leviticus 16. So I just thought that's beautiful. I'm just looking at, like, it's a Sabbath day. It's a day of no work as well. So 30.
I think
go ahead.
No, I think that's a really good point to emphasize on for a second, because like you were saying, we were reading in Leviticus 23, like even the wording behind what he was saying, like if you don't keep these feasts, or if you don't keep this Shabbat, like you will be cut off from among my people, like you will be separated. And it's not so much that that's his desire. We know that's not his heart, but he wanted to show us the importance. So when we would think about, okay, maybe we could just relax, or, what I hear a lot is, I could do what I can do. It's not about what you can do. It's about who you can surrender to and what he's able to do for you. Like, how much is your faith? Because he's clearly shown how important these things are by the wording that's being used. Does he say that also for the weekly Shabbat? Like, if we don't keep it, then you'll be cut off from among my people forever, put to death? Does he say that?
Yeah, let me find some verses on that.
I have a question.
So again, I hear us, but just to put in our mind, make a mental note, Abba is serious. These are important to him.
Go ahead, Joan. I think I heard Joan come in too. Thank you, Katori.
I just had a question. It can wait.
No, jump right in.
Because I saw a lot of things, and I'm just wondering, because I've never really asked this question before. Are you going to do all those things whenever you have your feast, whenever you commemorate your feast? Do you do all those things that they say in here to do? I never really asked anybody that.
It's a good question. For these, I don't do the offerings in particular, because I don't believe we can right now because of the lack of, I'm not gonna say the lack of Levites, but there is no temple. And I don't know what I would do if there was a temple, but I'm just saying, because of the position where we are in, I don't believe that we can fully, unfortunately, and that's where I was talking about, there's a sting of pain, because we're not in our own land, we're not in the midst of our own people, and having our king reign where we can fully walk these out. And I like the way my husband says it, and I agree with him, and some people may disagree, that we're not fully keeping the feast, because we can't keep all the aspects of it. We're not even in our land. I mean, that's just one of the pivotal things too, although we are the temple, and I hear where people say that, but I try to memorialize it as much as I can. And I think it's this aspect of almost like a rehearsal, like I am out here in the midst of being in the land of my oppressors, and yet I'm trying to cry out and saying, Yahuwah, I desire to be able to walk in these statutes fully, and I desire to be able to literally do all that you say that I can do, but I can't because of the limitations of our plight that we're in right now. So to answer your question, no, I do not do all of it and with the offerings and things of that certain nature. Do I keep it as a Sabbath? I try to do as much as I can that it does say. I do keep it as a Sabbath. I don't work. I know next week we're still contemplating in regards to some of us physically gathering because it is a set apart convocation, getting the word, trying to be with our brothers and sisters during this time. So in that aspect, yes. So that's for me personally. I don't know if anybody else has something else they wish to note on that. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I know we were, I think the last time I hadn't been on with you guys for a couple of weeks, but I just went through the series of feasts. So we just celebrated ours, and this was my first experience doing it. So it was very, I think it was very powerful for me, and regardless of timing, and it gets very confusing, but I did actually try to do, and I think because I was within a congregation, we were able to do a lot of these things. So when a Feast of Trumpets, there was a lot of shofars going off. We were, now that my Feast of Tabernacles definitely needed some improvement. I made a sukkah, but I didn't get to sleep in it. So it was just kind of like, we just did like a memorial. I would definitely improve upon that. And I think my feast, the atonement, was also very powerful for me. I made myself like a sackcloth dress. I decided to wear for the day. So I said, okay. And I fought with the fast. Is it technically saying a fast? Is it not saying a fast? Do we fast? Do we not fast? Ultimately, I felt for me, it would be humbling to fast. So I went ahead and did the fast. But I think that it's, what you were saying was that it's some of the things are not fully available to everyone. Like, yeah, I would like to travel and do a pilgrimage and do the Feast of Tabernacles completely. Just, dwell in the tents for some time. But I think it's possible to do the majority of it. I mean, it's harder, I would say, and it gets sticky because when you're in a congregation, sometimes you don't make all the decisions for yourself because you're within a group environment. So sometimes you just got to go with the flow, especially if you're haven't done it before. So you're like, all right, let's see what you guys do. And that's kind of like the difference. And I think that's the humbling part of it, to congregate, because then it's a humbling experience. You just don't get to do it the way you want to do it, the way necessarily you had envisioned doing it. But it was still definitely an awesome experience, regardless if not everything was as perfect as you would have liked it. But it was good times.
And hallelujah for that. And I say, regardless of, I know people get on this aspect of, oh, it's not during this calendar time, it's not during this time. At the end of the day, Yahuwah has sounded the alarm in each one of us to try our hardest to obey him and to try to seek him out and not forget. Sometimes I feel people get so much on the letter, right? So we get hung up on the letter and not the spirit. And then when it talks about that verse, I don't think it's saying that the Torah is done away with. I think it's in this aspect of, you're not doing this, and this in this manner. And there are rules and regulations that Yahuwah has, and we cannot do anything that we want on our own. So I agree with that. But sometimes we have to recognize that we are in this process of learning and trying to figure it out, and calling out to Yahuwah and saying, can you teach me your ways? I want to know your ways. So hallelujah. And that's absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Welcome for the first time around, and many more to come.
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting because I'm now definitely going to be looking out. It's like I'm still in alert. I'm still in trumpet mode, because since I know that there's a variance in the calendar, I'm like, well, maybe Yeshua shows up during their cycle. Let's see what happens then. See if these calendars are definitely. But I would agree. I think it is in the spirit of trying to be obedient, of saying I'm here with you. And we're going to go through this process, and you study the feast, and you really try to get the understanding of it so that you can really be in the spirit of that feast, even if you don't have a shofar to blow. I got myself a little toy trumpet, and I went out my balcony and I started blasting it in the morning. I was like, I can't get a shofar yet, but we're going to blast something.
There is a verse that talks about the voice as a trumpet. Go ahead, Skip, sorry.
There's a little bit of confusion, just a little bit. Okay, y'all. Yeah, there's a little mix up here with me because I haven't been. My understanding is not this way. This is not the way I understood this. So there's some questions in my head. I've always saw James, the book of James, when he talks about keeping the law, that if we were going to do it, we had to do it exactly right. And so this is where I'm stuck a little bit. So just so you'll know.
I hear you. And I think that there are brothers and sisters who do not even memorialize or try to observe the feast because of that. They say, I understand there's an aspect of you cannot do on your own accord, right? So this is why I'm saying, because I see the Torah is not done away with, and I see that these are statutes where it is a Sabbath, then I try to hold to whatever I possibly can. There are things that we just are limited to, like literally, like the offerings we just can't even do. I mean, that's just not even a possibility. I think if people are doing offerings, I would say that they're breaking Torah, because you have to have the Levites, you have to have the temple. It has to be I believe it has to be in the land particular. So I think those that try to do in that aspect are actually going against the Torah, because we can't, not anybody and everybody can just do these certain things.
But the offerings we would be able to partake in, because Messiah is our offering. It's said in Hebrews 10, and he's in Hebrews 10, starting from verse 5, he's reiterating Psalms 51. Slaughtering and meal offerings is not what he desired, but he has prepared a body for us. So how will we not be able to partake in the offerings? When I read in Leviticus 23 and really understand the principles and the spirit behind what he's asking us to do, I don't see anything that we can't do. I don't see anything that we're limited to. He's telling us to come before him. He's telling us to make an offering. Messiah is our offering. Messiah is the body that got prepared for our offering, our cleansing. I don't see anything we can't do. I've heard that it said that we only can keep it in the land, but I don't read that anywhere, especially in these verses where he's talking about the actual feast time.
It's in regards to, if we had to be honest with, when I'm talking about the offering, I'm talking about the physical blood offerings. When they were talking about offerings, it was not spiritualized. It was legitimately, you made a burnt offering with fire. That's what I'm referring to. Now, is Messiah our offering? Yes.
That was before Messiah. Yeah.
I think that's a study, because I kind of, I do agree that Messiah is our offering and our sacrifice. What I wonder is when the Levites come back, which I do believe that they will come back based on, there's verses in there that talk about it, what happens then. So I'm kind of stuck at this, we're after Messiah but before another temple coming. I don't know what my beliefs are on that, I'll be very honest. But when I'm referring to we cannot do everything in the sense, I'm talking about the burnt offerings, the sin offerings outside of Messiah. I'm talking about the physical actual ones that I do physically were in the temple, and you had to have the Levites, and those are in other scriptures, like the beginning of Leviticus where it talks about the priests are the ones that do the offerings. So I'm separating the physical ones. That's what the actual altar, not the aspect of the spiritual one, which I think that we broke down well, which I agree with. And these offerings and these thanksgivings that we give and these praises that we wind up giving, that we can partake in that aspect. I hope I
think
we could do this. We could do this because I see what you're saying. Like we would have to tie in the law and Messiah and everything together. We could do that another study, but I just wanted to read this one verse in verse 12 from Hebrews 10, but Hebrews 10:12, but it says, "But he, having offered one slaughtering offering for sins for all time, then he sat down at the right hand of Elohim." So this chapter and that verse is talking about there is no more slaughtering of animals. So Messiah, he did that once and for all. So he's no longer calling for that because that was already fulfilled. And I am able to do that part. I am able to partake in that part of the feast.
This is Abby. Can I just say something real quick? I wasn't trying to like be rude and cut in, in the middle. But I wanted to read a verse. It's in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 5. And it says, "Ye also, as lively stones, are built up a spiritual house and a holy priesthood to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to Elohim by Yahushua HaMashiach." So I do agree, Keturah. I think that Yahushua is our ultimate sacrifice because with the scripture she just read. And I think that I don't think. There's actually some verses, and there's a verse I'll look up. I didn't have time to look it up, but it talks about, I think our sacrifices are our prayers, because it talks about we are the temple in that verse, and then it talks about a spiritual sacrifice. So to me, I think it's our prayers that are sacrifices. And that's all I wanted to say. And I'm going to look up the verse where it talks about that Yahuwah doesn't desire in these burnt offerings. He desires in a contrite heart and prayers of a broken spirit, that people that really repent and turn, and those are sacrifices to him. He prefers that. It's somewhere in Psalms.
Psalms,
But that's all I wanted to say.
yeah, I think it's Psalms 51.
But then that would change the whole dynamic of the commandment and of the feast. If we're looking at it like that, that changes the whole dynamic of what he's asking them to do. Then that would change everything. If that's the case, then when he says, like, even in Numbers 15:1, for example, when you are coming to the land of your habitations, which I give unto you, and will make an offering by fire unto you, and will make an offering by fire unto Yahuwah, a burnt offering or a sacrifice, in performing a vow or a free will offering, or in your solemn feast to make a sweet savior going on. That would change all of that if that's the case. That's what I'm saying.
Right, it's bringing the symbols into reality. They had the symbols, we have the reality, which is the Messiah. The symbols always pointed to Messiah, even back then, whether they knew it or not. So we don't have to, why would we still do the symbols when the reality has already come to pass and been fulfilled in our lives, in our hearts? And like Abby said, we are the temple. So I don't see when he says that we're making sacrifices in the temple, if he said he did not desire the animal sacrifice, but the contrite heart and the humbleness of our spirit. That's what he wanted. And he prepared a body for us, so we don't have to worry about those animal sacrifices that was not able to cleanse our sins, because Messiah died once and for all.
I know that. Yes, I agree with you. That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. If that's the case, then this is different now. That is what I'm saying. It's not, you can't say that in other words, Leviticus and what you're saying, to me, is two different things. That's where I'm stuck.
And
I've asked, there's a lot of controversy going on right now with this third temple building, and I've joined in on some studies on that. And I know that, I've heard arguments on both sides, whether these, because understand that, the Jews don't have the Brit Hadashah. So they're going to continue with the sacrifices regardless. But it's always been my question, and I just think it's going to be really interesting to watch when this temple, if it does get erected and they start doing all of this, if it's going to be pleasing to the Father. Like, will there be a sign of dissatisfaction or satisfaction from the Father when this temple comes up? And are they the Levites? Are they not the Levites? The people that they think that are the Levites, they got this red heifer going on. They got all of these things set up for this new temple. And the fact is that they will be performing sacrifices. So I just think it's one of those things I'm really going to watch out for and see in evidence, because we're going to be able to do so. And by the time it comes time for us to actually have to practice this, Yahushua's going to be back. So it's going to be set straight, because these are holy convocations. These are rehearsals. So there will be a change of whether the sacrifices are necessary or not. And I think it's just going to be really straightened out by the evidence is going to be there. Because I think if the father's I'm just really curious as to what's going to happen when this temple comes up, and if there's going to be dead people dropping dead there for doing the wrong thing, or what. I mean, there was just. But I think by the time it comes for us to actually worry about making a sacrifice, we would be in the land, and Yahusha would be there, and it's going to be set straight.
I also wanted to say something else real quick. This is just a question because it's just lingering in my mind. If we're going to be doing sacrifices again, like it says, I'm just a little confused because wouldn't that nullify Yahusha as being the ultimate sacrifice? I think when it's talking about sacrifices, I truly think it's spiritual now. Because before, and I don't think, when we really do think about it, think about the innocence of an animal. Animals are so innocent. They're pure, they're loving. And when I read that verse, Yahuwah, that he doesn't desire in that, didn't it like hurt the father that he would have to do this to his own creation? And then to show them, look, an innocent life is dying for you, for your sins. And then he did the ultimate with his son. I just don't understand how we would be doing animal sacrifices with Yahusha being our ultimate sacrifice. Like, how he allow that again? That's my question.
Okay, I have a few thoughts on this. So I don't disagree with Yahusha obviously being the sacrifice, right? But in that Hebrews 10, it says the sacrifice is sin, and not all sacrifices were for sin. Some of them were Thanksgiving. Some of them, I mean, literally when we break a meal, there's a killing and a slaughtering of an animal when we eat. Those who eat meat. Okay, I'm not talking about vegans right now. Those who eat meat. So, and prior to the Torah, our father of faith, Abraham, Noah, Abel, they had altars where they gave sacrifices. This is before the Torah of Moshe, and it was pleasing to the Father, this aroma that was pleasing to him. And when I think about we're getting into a different topic right now, but part of it, but when I think about after Messiah died and resurrected, and Shaul, I had to find the verse where Shaul was being, accused of not keeping the Torah. And the brethren said, listen, go pay the vow for the Nazarite vow to show that you are for it. Part of the Nazarite vow was killing of animal. This is post-Messiah. When he says he's going to keep the feast, they never say, with Passover, that they're not going to slaughter lamb anymore. I think this is because, again, they're outside. Now we're outside of our land. And I don't think it discredits Messiah. You mentioned it. These are all shadows with the substance. But again, the substance, he came and he's gone and he will come back again. There's still a fulfillment that needs to be done. And I see him as that sin sacrifice. I think he fulfills all the offerings and sacrifices. Let me just put it that way. He's our peace offering, our thanksgiving, and our sin. And Hebrews, it specifically mentions sin. So I'm still wrestling with this doctrine. I don't have a concrete doctrine, but you guys keep mentioning Psalms 51. And when I look at the full, so I'm going to read it because the ending of it brings back offerings. And this is kind of where I get tripped up. Where does he say you want a broken and contrite heart? Oh no, I need that screen to go away for a second. Was it? I feel like it was Psalms 51 that mentions creating a clean. Not that one where you don't bulls of goats.
17.
Yeah,
7. Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
I'm starting from 16 too.
All right, perfect. So it says, "For you desire not sacrifice, else would I give it. You desire not a burnt offering. The sacrifice of Elohim are broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. O Elohim, you will not despise." Because, and this is what I'm saying, and I think we've hit the point in the beginning where the trumpets and these offerings, there are spiritual implications that far outweigh the physical. But the physical is needed so that we can understand the depths of the spiritual. I think that's how Yahuwah speaks to us. When we keep going, though, in 18, it says, do good in your good pleasure unto Zion, build you the walls of Yerushalayim. Then, sorry, this full screen's messing me up. Then shall you be pleased with the sacrifices of righteousness. And then it goes with burnt offering and whole burnt offering. Then shall they offer bullocks upon your altar. I cannot erase that verse. So Yahuwah himself instituted the animal sacrifices, I believe, to show us, like Keturah has mentioned, I completely agree with you, this foreshadowing of Messiah, this there's death that has to be taking place, and the offering of bulls and goats could not take away our sin. They could not take away the consciousness of our sin that has happened. Only the blood of Messiah can do that. But I can't negate that Yahuwah has set it up. Like I said, I'm still in limbo with what happens in the future. I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't have a solid stance. So I'm in this wrestling stage. But I think he's done all these because he's trying to say, I want you to have a broken and contrite spirit. And I think Yisrael, our forefathers, honestly got to the point where they were just sacrificing. One, they were sacrificing to other mighty ones, but two, they weren't sacrificing with a broken and contrite heart. The whole purpose of this, when you come before him to an altar with your gift, is literally to be broken. And Abigail, you mentioned the purity of animals. You know, he says, come with unblemished. I've never killed an animal, and if I had to, I know I would be sorrowful. Just the thought of literally taking the life of something that was living. I feel like our forefathers lost that depth of it. And Yahuwah uses these verses and these scriptures to remind us and say, you're missing the point. It's not about the blood of bulls and goats, although I instituted that. It is the depths of your heart and that brokenness. So I agree with that. I'm just still kind of wrestling with the physical offering. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
So Millie, if you look at this, the last verse that you read, verse 19, this is still pre-Messiah. So of course David would be still keeping the law, the actual animal sacrifice, if that's what the law required, because the fulfillment hasn't come to pass yet. But it's interesting, if you look at Hosea 14, verse 1 and 2, he says, let me just read it. It says, O Israel, return to Yahuwah your Elohim, for you have stumbled by your crookedness. Take words with you and return to Yah. Say to him, take away all crookedness and accept what is good, and we render the bullocks of our lips. So even then, he's not talking about the actual physical sacrificial system of the animal, but it's something that's coming from our hearts, and then it's coming out of our mouths.
I agree. And I guess I don't take these verses and wash away the physical ones. That's what I'm trying to say. So I can't just pull out these verses and forget that the physical was showing the spiritual. Yahuwah to me is showing us the depths of thanksgiving comes from our lips, and those are offerings, and these are our praise and thanksgiving and our peace offerings. These are literally something that comes from within us, but he used the physical system. Now, don't get me tripped up. People saying I'm denying the Messiah. I don't deny the Messiah. So let me just clarify that. And two, I do believe that he fulfills these offering and sacrifices. The only thing I'm confused about is when they come back and when the nations will be celebrating tabernacles, what that looks like. I'm not dismissing nor do I disagree with you, Keturah, in regards to the depth of the implications outside of the physical offerings. That's if I'm just clarifying. So I do believe Messiah. I don't renounce him. I don't think the offerings are above him or trump him being on the stake, because the blood offerings of animals could not, never will take away our sins. Can't do it in any way, shape, or form. So I agree with that.
So I want to read two verses. Well, not two verses, but two sections. One from the Tanakh and the other one from the Brit Hadashah. And it's going back to Psalms 81. And this is to the point of what John was asking. You know, is it basically getting rid of that, or changing the meaning of what those sacrifices are? But I think we also, like both you and Keturah said, we have to do a study on that. And I think that the burnt offerings at different times mean something, and then some of it is for sin, some of it is for other things. But in 81, it says plainly, in 81:11, but my people did not listen to my voice, and Yisrael would not submit to me. So I gave them over to their own stubborn heart, to walk in their own counsel. Oh, if my people had listened to me, Yisrael would walk in my ways. I would subdue their enemies at once and turn my hand against their adversaries. Those who hate Yahuwah would cringe before him, and their time be forever. He would feed them with the finest of wheat and with honey from the rock I will satisfy you. So I think, had we listened, there wouldn't be this much discord or confusion, so to speak, as to whether we should do the feast or not do the feast. But these words are in the Tanakh. This is and there are two covenants, and I believe that there's two covenants for, a reason. Like Evelyn was saying, the Jewish people, they observe the Tanakh or the Old Covenant. And I believe, my belief and my understanding is, if you engage in all of the doings of the Old Covenant and you don't take on the belief of Yahusha, then you're bound by the things in that covenant. I mean, if you think of judicial order or law and the order of things, which is how the Shemayim has been established, the wages of sin is death. The wages of sin is blood. So under that blood covenant, if you're practicing all the things under that blood covenant and you're, holding fast to that and renouncing what Yahusha the Messiah is in the second covenant, then I believe that you are bounding your soul to that. That's just my own understanding. So in Hebrews 12,
hold on, before you go on for a second, just real quick with that last portion, and because Evan had brought that up, I would say that if they go back to that and don't have Messiah, if you deny Messiah, you deny the Father, and therefore all that they do is a stench to his nostrils, regardless of it being in the Torah. Now, you made an interesting point that they're bound to everything that's in the Old Covenant. If that's the case, then I would say then they're still bound to death, like literally, because they're denying the whole premise of all that we're talking about is this foreshadowing coming to the end where Messiah is the mark. He is the goal. And I don't want anybody to get tripped up in it into the physical offering. I think we're kind of going off where we have mentioned in all the beginning, that aspect of the depths of our heart are crying out. I mean, I think we hit those points hard. So I would say that if they do go back to that, it's voided, because you're missing the mark of Messiah. Like so that to me, their blood offerings wouldn't, I think it would taint them. I think it would be sin, to be honest. That's just kind of where I see, because I don't think you can't deny Messiah and still come to the Father. So
and that's part of my
oh, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. That was always part of my argument, that at least what's going on in the land is that they don't have Messiah. So I mean, there's just two big sides to it. But if they don't have Messiah, then they're like you said, null and void as far as their offerings. That they're missing a big chunk of it. But when just reading, when it does mention that in Revelation, my question is, if the Father, if he already knew this from the get, like he knew everything from the beginning. So those that were building the temple were not going to be messianic. They were not going to be believers in Yeshua. It's just the way it is. It's the way it's happening. And I think he already knew that was going to be the case. So it always brought to the question, and I agree with Nilo on that, is it even valid? If it were valid, then is it even valid with missing on Messiah? Or is that just part of something that has to occur in order for him to come back, regardless of whether it's pleasing or displeasing to the Father? And that was my question before. Are these offerings even legit? Are they going to be pleasing to him? Is that even a legitimate temple per se? If under those conditions, and I think I sit on that. I've heard strong arguments on both sides of whether in fact it is or it isn't legit, but it seems that it is. It's very confusing, but I agree with that. Without Messiah, how does even it all play out at all?
And I was just going to finish up Hebrews 12:14. It says, pursue peace with all and Kadeshah, without which no one shall see the Adon. See to it that no one falls short of the favor of Elohim, that no root of bitterness springs up causes trouble, by which many become defiled, lest there be anyone who whores or profane one like Esau, who for a single meal sold his birthright. For you know that afterward, when he wanted to inherit the Baraka, he was rejected, for he found no place for repentance, though he sought it with tears. Verse 18, for you have not drawn near to a mountain touched and scorched with fire, and to blackness and darkness and storm, and to a sound of a trumpet and a voice of words, so that those who heard it begged that no further word should be spoken to them, for they could not bear what was commanded. If even a beast touches the mountain, it shall be stoned or shot through with an arrow. And so fearsome was the sight that Moshe said, I exceedingly fear and tremble. But you have drawn near to Mount Zion and to the city of the living Elohim, to Jerusalem of the Shamaim, to myriads of messengers. 23, to the entire gathering and assembly of the firstborn, having been enrolled in the Shamaim, and to Elohim, the judge of all, and to the spirits of righteous men made perfect, and to Yahusha, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the blood of sprinkling, which speaks better than Abel. So I think that, he's saying and this is in Hebrew, so this is, the Brit Hadashah, this is after Messiah. So you can compare, those two verses or those two chapters where I see it as almost a memorial of what happened in the Tanakh in the time of Moshe and how we were still falling short, having that personal encounter with Yahuwah, having heard words, straight from Elohim and those commandments, and we still fell short. So to still try to carry out those commandments, I mean, that's a very high, difficult thing to do in the land that we live in, doing those sacrifices, making sure you don't have an animal without blemish. I mean, we're surrounded by foods that are created in a lab, and you just never know what type of affliction these animals have. So I really have a different understanding, not that Yahusha has nullified the entire Torah, but that those sacrifices are different now, because we could never really attain it back then, because even the priests and the high priests that were doing it, they were doing it in their own counsel, their own man-made way. So I just wanted to show the dynamic between a chapter from the Brit Hadashah, which is under the New Covenant, and the Old Covenant. That's all.
Hallelujah. Good stuff. This is a good conversation. This is one of those topics, I think it goes into, if I'm not missing, like the Melchizedek order and what happens in the future. So maybe this is something that, in regards to the offerings and what happens with them when there's a regathering of Levites, like this is a in-depth study to do. And maybe that can be one of the studies that we do as a topical study that comes in, in the weeks to come. So.
Izzy, where were you reading from? I just wanted to know so I can reread it.
That was 12, verse 14 to verse 24.
Cool beans, Karen and Katora, where we're going? We got a few minutes left.
We should probably close because we're not going to be able to go over a whole nother feast. And or we could all talk about, you know what, we're about to go into atonement, but a lot of the verses that we read, it covered both trumpets and atonement. There's a 10-day time period between trumpets and atonement. And atonement just goes over how we need to humble ourselves. And I don't know if we can read it real quick from Leviticus 16. And then we can kind of remember all the verses that brought in this concept.
I think that would be good to go. I would also suggest, because I would like to go into the depths of atonement as well. I think there's the affliction of your soul and things like that. If maybe we can move Matthew 6 from next week and go over this feast, as well as to run into Sukkot, since we are on the times to. I don't want to short
change it. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. I was like, short. So, cool beans. You said Leviticus 16?
Yeah, let's just read the one of the main verses. Does anybody volunteering to read? I can't read right this second.
I can read. Which verse?
Let's start from 5, maybe.
Leviticus 16:5. And from the congregation of the children of Israel, he takes 2 male goats as a sin offering and 1 ram as a burnt offering. And Aaron shall bring the bull as a sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house. Verse 7, and he shall take the 2 goats and let them stand before Yahuwah at the door of the tent of atonement. And Aaron shall cast lots for the 2 goats, one lot for Yahuwah and the other lot for Azazel. And Aaron shall bring the goat on which the lot of Yahuwah fell, and shall prepare it as a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot for Azazel fell is caused to stand alive before Yahuwah, to make atonement upon it, to send it into the wilderness to Azazel. And Aaron shall bring the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house, and shall slaughter the bull as a sin offering, which is for himself. And shall take a fire. I think I want to stop there. He keeps saying for himself. And I think is that emphasizing that, you know, how we can pray for people, but we can't bring them to repentance? Is the saying that he's not able to slaughter this for his household, that it's for himself? Just wanted to stop there for a second. Because it says in verse 6, and Aaron shall bring the bull as a sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house. And then it goes down later and says in 11, and Aaron shall bring the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house, and shall slaughter the bull as the sin offering, which is for himself. He keeps emphasizing that. Am I understanding that correctly?
Where's the does anybody know where the verse is where it says, we're talking about Messiah, right? Talking about where the priests had to bring offerings for themselves continually for themselves, but Yahusha didn't. I feel like it might be in Hebrews too. Everything is probably in Hebrews when it comes to this. Let me see if I can find what I'm talking about. You guys can keep going unless you want me to pause the recording.
Well, who is Azazel in verse 8? Does anybody know?
When I look at the Hebrew,
scapegoat,
yeah.
He's a scapegoat.
The in verse 8? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, John.
What is the scapegoat? I'm sorry.
There was 2 goats that were set up so that when on the Day of Atonement, when the high priest went to do the sin offering, he did one sin offering for him, like they just said, for himself and his household, and he also did one for the people. Now, after Yeshua, I think one of the signs that they got was they took 2 goats and they put like a one they killed and one they let go, and they put a white ribbon, and then they used to walk it like miles away and basically just run it off of a cliff.
I know about. I'm talking about Azazel. I said, who is that?
It's the name of the scapegoat.
Yeah.
That's the name of the goat? Okay. I didn't know that.
Here, let's do this. Joan, you're Joan. June, can you do the screen share for Leviticus, where we're at in 16? And I wonder, Joan, why they chose to use the Hebrew word instead of actually just using the English, which I think is why, like, some people think it's a name. What verse was that, Joan?
Verse 8. Verse
8. Okay. Can you, June, go to Blue Letter, Leviticus 16:8. Let's see here. Because I want to show you, John, why we're saying the scapegoat. Like some translations will translate it into English and say scapegoat, and then some for some reason use the Hebrew. Yeah, click on verse 8, and then I'm tapping the screen like I can click on it. Scroll down, and okay, right before you click, yeah, you can actually click on it. On H5799, where it says for the scapegoat. Down. Yeah, that one. You see where it says as pronunciation Azaz. Azazel, or transliteration Azazel. So that's in the meaning. It says entire removal or scapegoat. I don't know why they use the like the Hebrew pronunciation in that verse rather than translating into English as though it is like a person or something. I'm not sure. That's something to look into to see where else I guess it appears. June, your names together. I'm getting confused. June, scroll up a little bit and keep scrolling. It says it's only used four times. Scroll up a little bit more. A little bit more. Okay, boom, right there. All right. So it's only used in this chapter actually. So in 16:8, Aharon shall cast lots upon the two goat, one for Yahuwah and the other for some versions will say Azazel, or it says the scapegoat. And verse 10, but the goat on which the lot fell to be the scapegoat, and then 26, and he shall let this. Yeah, so I don't know why they decided to just use the Hebrew like pronunciation of it rather than just putting everything into English. That's pretty interesting.
Okay, thanks.
So has no
I
one
never
heard?
noticed that before.
Has no one heard about Azazel being the name of one of the fallen angels that taught men about the manufacturing of, I think, guns or war? Is that something that?
Yeah, is that in like Yasher or Yovel? Is it one of the extra biblical books, the Apocrypha?
Yeah, I can't remember which. I think it was in the Apocrypha or the Lost Scriptures, one of those books that I had read it in.
Okay, so maybe that's why they put it to try to connect into one of those books. I'm not too sure. I honestly don't recall. I'm in the midst of reading them, but I don't fully recall. I'm still trying to find the other verse though.
I forgot Keturah and Yadiel were visiting with Jones. That was just talking about each other.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't find the verse I'm looking for. I feel like it's Hebrews, but I can't find it quick enough. But good stuff. So I think we can. I think this was good. I as long as the focus I get from all of this was the sounding of the alarm and this aspect of most of us trying to memorialize this feast and saying what is the foreshadowing of it, and obviously it all comes to Messiah, and then it comes to the end, which we're waiting for it to come into the kingdom, and remembering that we ourselves need to be the trumpet, right? Because there are verses that talk about sound the alarm or with your voice, and Yeshayahu, which I think Keturah had read, and just the aspect of really awakening ourselves up to the call of Yahuwah and standing as his army and just preparing ourselves in the mindset of where these feasts bring us to, which it should always be at the feet of Messiah. Always. That if it's not drawing us closer to Messiah, closer to the Father, then we really need to re-examine ourselves, I would say. So this was a good reminder for me in just regards to upholding these as much as I can and remembering this is a part convocation. Go ahead.
I'm about to hook my head. Give it to him.
You were a bit muffled. Say that again, Joe. No, nothing's coming. I think. Say it again. No, you're still muted. June, you had something you want to know? Anybody have any closing remarks that they want to know before we end off the recording?
No, great study.
I wanted to explain why I asked that other question, and it was because Keturah was asking, if we thought that we'd be cut off, and I didn't think that we would because of the Messiah. So that's why I asked that question.
Gotcha. Well, I wonder if we don't keep as Sabbath, what does that look like? But then again, I have to remember we are in exile. I mean, that's one of the biggest. I think that's where all this confusion or or turmoil, not necessarily confusion, but this back and forth is because we're not in our own land. And a lot of these times when all this is happening, other than Passover where they were in the wilderness, but these things are showed out when they're in the land and fully functioning as their own governing body. So I think that's a very interesting.
I think it just in reference just came to mind right now when she said that about being cut off. I think there was a difference before and after we decided to become an Israelite. So when we got grafted in, if we feel we got grafted in, then there was a commitment to that. And I think prior to that, if we were just Gentiles back then there was no cutting off. We were not in the covenant. But when we made a decision to come into the covenant, when we made a decision to get grafted into that tree, I think that if after that point you neglect these things out of neglect, then I think there is a cutting off. I think there is a consequence to it, regardless of whether you're in exile, unless it's impossible, unless Pharaoh just won't let you out and you can't take off. And but I think if wholeheartedly we are making our best attempt to because we're in the covenant, because we made that decision, I think that then there is a consequence to it, like any other of the sins that we would be committing. I think that there's a before and after, a clear before and after. Functioning as Gentiles, if not.
Sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to make sure. What was the last part? And then Joan, you can unmute. I just wanted to make sure we heard of the ending.
No, I just think there's a clear before and after. When you make that decision, when there is that circumcision of the heart, when there is that commitment, that grafting in, that there would be consequences for neglecting these feasts, because they're commandments. I'm telling you what to do. I'm telling you what to do, when to show up, and what to do. And to say, well, no, I think there's a clear consequence to that. Now, if it's a full cutting off or not, I don't want to find out, but I think it's really important.
And also, I just wanted to make the emphasis on how important this was to Father, because out of all the 10 commandments you see with the Shabbat, this is the only one that he says remember. And so when we're not reading for so much the spirit of it, but what is his heart trying to say? Like, what is he really trying to get us to understand? And when I see phrasing like cut off and put to death, it's like that's not how his heart is. He's very serious about this. He's telling his people this is something to take note of. And like I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, sister, but like she was just saying, it just goes to show the importance of it. And the same importance that he holds is the same that I was trying to get us to emphasize in our own hearts. It's not something just to be glanced over like the world glances over. These days are important to him, and we should do all we can to keep them.
Cool beans. And Joan, did you want to unmute? I'm sorry, I only muted you because it was cutting out Evelyn's voice for a second. I'll unmute you. There you go. Sorry.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of, I don't know, I feel kind of some kind of way. I don't know. Because I can't go. I can't, well, I'll say this, at this time, I can't go. And so I don't want to feel like, oh, the Messiah is going to do something to me or cut me off or whatever because I can't go. So that's, of course it's going to be important to me to know his thoughts about it.
I think that
I'm going to pray.
If you have a living room or a room and you can set up a tent, if you got a balcony, if you got anywhere where you can make yourself a sukkah and just do your best to dwell in it. I mean, I don't think it's about going anywhere, because at the end of the day, we're not the pilgrimage. First of all, it was a requirement for the men to go to Jerusalem, not for the women. So that's it. We don't have to go anywhere. We do have to dwell in it. But as far as going somewhere, I wouldn't be like I was at home, and like I said, I made a sukkah out in the park because there was conflicts in my house about my building one in the backyard, which is where I wanted to be. and I wasn't able to do so. But yet I still went to visit it, try to have a meal under it, try to spend some time under it over there in the park. And it was very interesting about sounding the trumpets, because everybody was asking me in my neighborhood, what are you doing? What is this thing you put up here? Because I put it out in the park, in the little baseball field across the street. So I think even in your own home, and I know we don't like to get much example from the Jews, but that's what they do. You got a living room, if you have a bedroom, if you have a space in your house that you can put up a tent, if you can make it out of cords, blankets, whatever, and symbolically dwell in it as best as you can. If you could find a place to congregate with some like believers on some of these days, then you just had yourself a holy convocation. If you have people in your house and you guys are together in his name, that's a holy convocation with as many people as you can. And I think that's where like the lines get blurry about whether we have to follow this exactly. I wasn't able to go anywhere, but I did our best to do it as best as we can. So I think that that's the point of it. It's not to ignore it because you can't go anywhere, but the question is, what can you do to do your best? And we all have different living situations. Like I'm at my mom's house now. They wouldn't let me do it in the house, or it was a problem. So I said, okay, well, you don't want to let me do it here. It's your land. I got it. No problem. I'm going to go over to public land and I'm going to build and let the township tell me I can't do it. And I had some ruffling in my household because of it. But yet I wasn't going to let that stop me. I went and I built a sukkah out of sticks. I went and I cut down some tall grass and I cut down tree branches and I took some rope, and it was very interesting because I built my sukkah all by myself. And it was a tall structure a full man can fit under. Knocked myself in the head. I got scratches and wounds. But at the end of the day, I think it was just to please the Father, to please him, and to say, you know what, I did my best. I didn't dwell under it, which is something I regret. I want to do that next time. Make sure that wherever I put up my sukkah, I can sleep under it because I have the physical capability of doing so. I'm not so old or so broken. But I think it's more the trying of it, the sincere, effort to, even if you don't go anywhere, to make a tent somewhere in your dwelling or somewhere that you have access to that is safe for you to be able to sleep in or have a meal in, or do your best to spend some time under there.
Good stuff. On that note, I'm going to end it because we are past our time. This is a great study, and I'm going to stop the recording, and then we'll get into quick admin stuff as to what we'll do next week, and then we'll continue. So praise Yahuwah.